Val is the starter medic in Evolve, and I should make it clear from the get-go what you're in for here. I can say with 100% confidence that the medic role in Evolve is by far the toughest role in the entire game. Not to scare any of you off from playing medic, because it does seem to be a very popular role which people do tend to find very rewarding and engaging. Just letting you know that if you want to learn how to play medics in Evolve, then for the vast majority of the ones you can pick, you are going to be in for a challenge. And unfortunately, not even Val is an exception to that. In fact, the skill curve of Val is quite steep and punishing, honestly, though she is very rewarding once you overcome that rough patch. That being said, before we start on Val, bear with me for a quick detour on who you should look at playing, if not Val, to start as a medic in Evolve. If you are interested in learning how to play medics in Evolve, but you just want an easier starting point, then I'd have to recommend either of the two variants in the game, Rogue Val or the Stage 2 exclusive Quantum Kyra. Neither of these characters are quite as easy to pick up as the easiest Assault, which would be Hyde, the easiest Trapper, which would be Wasteland Maggie, or the easiest Support, who would be Bucket. But they're the easiest you'll get in the medic role. There are three big reasons that the medic role is generally so difficult, and I'll list these in ascending order of importance. First of all, medics are often forced to multitask the most. They're often micromanaging dealing damage with providing healing when needed, while also maintaining other character-specific buffs or debuffs for the team, all while trying to stay alive when most medics are on the more frail and vulnerable side. The other roles don't really have to focus on quite as much. Assaults just deal damage to the monster, trappers just have to find and trap the monster, and the support has to multitask a little bit between providing support and providing damage, but generally, they don't have as much to worry about as medics. Second, despite not being based around their damage dealing, medics actually make up most of the more aim-intensive and mechanically demanding characters in the game, which seems strange at first, but it makes sense once you realize that most assaults in the game don't actually have very aim-intensive abilities, because they're made for close-range combat on an extremely large target. So of course they wouldn't have very aim-intensive abilities. That's why most of them use shotguns, or auto-aiming weapons like Markov's lightning gun or flamethrowers. Medics, on the other hand, want to fight the monster from a distance usually, and as a result, most of their weapons are pretty accurate and require some pretty good aim. However, the final and most important reason why medic tends to be pretty difficult in Evolve is because as a medic, 90% of the time you are the monster's first target, and they will use every resource they have to kill you and only you first. Rogue Val and Quantum Kyra still have a lot to worry about like any medic does, but they're both a little easier to stomach for a newer player because they both have impressive self-sustain to make themselves a little bit less vulnerable. Rogue Val also has a passive healing aura which makes multitasking a little bit easier, and Quantum Kyra is one of the few medics who don't require much in terms of aim since her shots have such a large AoE. We'll get more in depth on those characters in future, but for now this video is about Val, so let's get back to Val. Val is a very tough but very rewarding medic. She's probably the single most aim-intensive hunter in Evolve, wielding long-range hit-scan weapons with very small ammo capacities and long reload times, which punish every single shot that you miss pretty harshly. There also isn't a single character in the game who gets punished more harshly for bad positioning than Val. Val is made for long-range combat and has no self-sustain, so the second the monster gets into her face, she is absolutely screwed. And the only tools that you're given to deal with that fact is your usual positioning and jetpack movement that any hunter has access to. Most medics at the very least get some self-heal or escape mechanics to help them out, but Val gets neither. The only self-heal she gets is the signature medic ability that they can all use, the Heal Burst, and she gets no escape mechanics besides the usual jetpack that all hunters have. Val's main weapon is the armor-piercing sniper rifle, one of the few hit-scan weapons in the game, obviously effective at long range, but with only one shot in a clip before you have to reload already. Its damage is not very impressive, but that's because its real value is in its ability to place weak spots on the monster. Teammates who shoot those weak spots will get a 35% damage boost, and that does stack with the double damage of landing a headshot. So if you can place a weak spot on the monster's head, you can get even more damage boosts. Val's main method of healing is the med gun, which projects a long-range heal beam with a small amount of auto-lock, which provides constant healing to the target as long as you continue to hold down the button and track them well enough without anything breaking line of sight, or LOS, with your target. Val's main utility ability is a powerful debuff in the form of her Tranquilizer Dart, The effect doesn't last long, but it severely slows the monster while revealing them through walls to your entire team, and that's all for simply landing a shot on them with this precise hit scan weapon. So it's not all that hard to land a shot from a distance with this. Unlike the sniper though, you get 3 shots in a clip of the tranquilizer dart, so you get a couple of extra chances if you miss your first couple shots. Although again, the reload is very, very long. The debuff is relatively short, but it can be refreshed constantly as long as you keep landing shots, and is very valuable if you can do that. Of course, the signature ability of the medics is the aforementioned heal burst, simply providing a sudden burst of healing to you and nearby teammates, but on a relatively long cooldown. Moving on to some of the more advanced advice, there isn't all that much to say about learning to play Val at a more advanced level, since the vast majority of the skill set you need is a very general one. To master Val, you really just need very good aim and very good positioning. It's just you need to have both of those things in spades. As a result, a lot of this advice is near universally applicable to almost any character, but is just more important for Val. If you don't follow this advice, then you'll be punished a lot harder for it on Val than on any other character in the game. That being said, here's a quick rapid-fire list of general positioning advice. Obviously, position on high ground where you have LOS of your teammates. Always ensure that you have an escape route to another safe spot, just a jetpack dash or 2 away. Never let your jetpack fuel deplete low enough that you won't be able to reach your escape route. And aside from escaping, you should only be using jetpack fuel to get better angles when it's crucial to heal a teammate, and never so much that you're leaving yourself open to getting chased for it. As well as that, as with all characters, it's good to know what you provide to the team by picking Val. You provide good single target heals, long range pressure, and some damage amp through weak spots. Most importantly though, you provide chase through your range and trank darts. As long as you stay on an escaping monster's tail, it will not only have a much harder time getting away, but more importantly, it won't ever be able to hide from you or your team until it manages to break LOS for long enough. Sometimes you can take some devastating angles as Val that allow you to deny huge stretches of the map to a hiding monster. Trank darts are overall extremely powerful and the main reason to play Val. And lastly, for the general tips, just know your priorities. It depends on whether the monster is on the attack or not, of course. If the monster's the one coming for your team, then you should prioritize healing first, trank second, and landing shots with the sniper should be your lowest priority. If the monster is trying to get away though, tranks become your main priority, followed by healing, but either way, the sniper still remains your lowest priority. Of course, against more hit-and-run monsters like Wraith and Gorgon, you should be careful not to make the mistake of playing too aggressive into what seems like a retreat, only to get ambushed and die for it. Always ask yourself if you're in a situation where you as Val are forced to take initiative. If this is a trick, how bad does this turn out for me? You can't always know if it is a trick, you can't always know if your aggression will be punished or not, but you can know if the consequences of this going bad will be either just being hurt a bit and having to deal with that, or being flat out killed. And you should probably avoid the latter. With all that said, let's get onto some more ability-specific advice. First, let's take a close look at Val's armor-piercing sniper rifle. It deals 108 damage per shot, and each shot is punctuated by 1.45 second long reloads. Each weak point, as I said, provides a 35% damage boost, and the weak points last 15 seconds before wearing off. Because of the relatively low damage output of the sniper, the majority of its value, as I said, is in its range and the damage amp of the weak spots. And the weak spots have diminishing returns. Not to say that placing more weak spots is necessarily always a bad idea, but if there are other things that need doing once you have 1 or 2 weak spots on the monster, placing more is rarely necessary. As well as that, with how rarely it matters in Evolve, it can be easy to forget. But remember that headshots do exist in Evolve. Many weapons in the game aren't capable of headshotting, especially assault weapons, which is why it can be easy to forget. And many of the monsters in the game can be near impossible to headshot at times, but they still provide double damage for landing headshot, and that stacks with your weak spots, as I mentioned earlier. Landing a headshot with the sniper is hard since the monster's head hitboxes are often small and aggressively thrashing around, and you only get 1 shot before reloading. But if you can land a headshot as Val, the reward is pretty significant. You only need 1, as you can't stack weak spots too close to already existing ones anyway, so you can just get a few chances at landing that headshot. As a side note, the 2 Krakens are typically the easiest monsters in the game to headshot, followed by the 2 Goliaths, who are also pretty easy to headshot provided they're facing towards you or side on. If they're facing away from you, their head hitbox will be completely obscured by their shoulders, and it'll be impossible to hit. Gorgon's head hitbox is risky to go for, because there isn't much body surrounding her head, so a missed headshot on Gorgon is more likely to be a complete miss rather than just a body shot instead of a headshot. But that being said, her head isn't much smaller than Goliath's. But the main monsters you may not want to try headshotting are Wraith and the two behemoths. Wraith's head isn't particularly small, but she moves so fast, erratic, and aggressive that her head is constantly jolting in every direction possible, making her surprisingly even more difficult to headshot than Gorgon, despite seeming to have a slightly larger head. And in the case of behemoths, their weak point isn't even their head. It's the very center of their underbelly where their guts are exposed, which isn't a small target per se, but is also only briefly visible when Behemoth is winding up a huge attack, which makes it very risky to go for, and very rarely a target that's available to be hit. Next, let's take a closer look at her med gun. The med gun heals 115 health per second and lasts a total of 11 seconds before exhausting its full capacity, allowing it to heal up to 1,277 HP before needing to recharge for 6.5 seconds. Many healing abilities in Evolve also heal down teammates faster for some reason, and that includes the med gun, which heals an extra 60 health per second if the target is down. As well as that, your maximum range with the med gun is a pretty long 60 meters. Using the med gun is pretty straightforward, honestly. Just remember that this thing's range is huge at 60 meters, so if you're having trouble healing someone, don't jump down. It's probably not a range problem. It's either a line of sight problem or an aim problem. Because while the med gun may auto-lock, do not fall into the trap of thinking it's a mercy beam. The auto-lock is there, but it isn't very strong, and it is a lot easier than you think to get your chain broken because of a sudden movement if your tracking isn't up to snuff. Beyond that, just remember, your healing is consistent, but not at all fast. When people are even just minorly injured, you need to be already healing them before the monster even attempts to jump on them. Because while the med gun can save lives, it's rarely fast enough to save a teammate if the monster starts attacking them when they were already injured in the first place. Lastly is a reminder that in Evolve, you can actually revive down teammates without even having to go up to them, simply by healing them enough instead of reviving them the usual way. This allows you to use the med gun to go for sneaky long-range revives which don't leave you open to attack. The trank gun has 3 shots in the chamber, slows the monster's movement by 30% for 7 seconds, which is a lot more than it sounds like by the way, and has a 2.71 second long reload time. As mentioned before, even though the trank dart does have a misleading visual that makes it look like it's a projectile, it is a hit scan weapon, meaning that it has a 0-second travel time. The second you click, if there is a straight line between you and the monster, you hit them. And that makes it really easy to click on a monster even an infinite distance away, so long as you have LOS to completely reveal it to your entire team. So long as the monster is in your sight lines, it should not spend 1 second untranquilized, unless you're too busy healing a wounded teammate. You'll simply have to get some practice on landing tough shots on monsters as you play with Val with the trank darts, is all I have to say, because you will have moments in games where you catch an obscured glimpse of part of the monster hundreds of meters in the distance before they slip away, and whether you're actually able to land that trank dart quickly from such a distance will be the difference between winning or losing some games. Aside from that, remember that the reload time of your trank darts is very, very long. I personally have developed a bit of a bad habit of trying to trank dart the monster, then immediately swapping back to my sniper for only 1 shot, and then swapping back to my trank darts. This is a bad habit because with how long the reload of the trank darts is, I have more than enough time for a second shot of the sniper before switching back to the tranks. And so firing 1 shot is simply choosing to deal less damage for no reason. I started falling into this trap because most of the weapons in the game have relatively short reloads, so I'm used to being able to quickly swap back to weapons and expect them to be ready to fire after only leaving them for a second or two. But the tranks are long enough that hasty swapping will end up meaning wasted time. Lastly, the trank darts are also really, really valuable because it makes your walking speed as a monster so painfully slow that it essentially forces them to use movement abilities. But most movement abilities force them into predictable movement. And so while the monster is tranquilized, it's easier to predict how they're going to move, even though they are still able to move relatively fast if they use movement abilities, so that you can actually use your jetpack to dodge around and dodge their attacks. For example, if a Goliath has exhausted all their jumps and they get tranquilized and they're trying to chase after me, I know they're probably going to go for a body slam to go after me, since the body slam won't be slowed, but if they just walk at me, they won't be able to catch up with me. And that means I can keep my jetpack fuel ready to dodge out of the way of a body slam. Lastly, we're going to take a little look at Heal Burst, because even though Val's Heal Burst is of course the signature ability that every medic has, for some strange reason, every medic's Heal Burst is slightly different, so let's go over the specifics. Val's Heal Burst will instantly heal everyone within 30 meters of her for 307 health, and heal herself for a total of 550. And it can be used every 12.5 seconds. Val's Heal Burst is not all that unique for the most part, but it's important to take a second to talk about it because Val relies on it more than most other medics. Being her only form of self-sustain, and only way to counteract burst damage on a teammate, whether you have your healing burst available or not will really dictate how you play Val to an extent. You have to play more passive while it's off cooldown, of course, because not only are you more vulnerable, but any valiant attempts to risk your life to save a teammate are a lot less likely to succeed without that burst heal. Sit back, wait, do what little you can from a safe distance, and just bide your time until the heal burst is back. Overall, Val is a powerful but challenging medic. She doesn't really have any tricks or gimmicks, just pure good old-fashioned skill and teamwork, but used effectively, she has the power to dictate the pace of the game, being able to save teammates, amplify damage, and prevent the monster from ever escaping the sights of the team. A skillful Val will be in full control of every aspect of the game, except the damage dealt to the monster. Of course, that would be the assault's job. It's a tough call, but I would genuinely say that Val is deserving of being named one of the top 3 or so hardest characters in the game to really get used to and master. Val is a free kill for the monster if her jetpack mechanics are rusty and her positioning is anything less than impeccable. But that's all because, of course, Val is able to provide insane pressure from an insanely safe distance if she's allowed to be kept alive. Though, of course, to be able to apply that pressure, you need to be able to land those difficult shots on the monster, both to get the most out of your weak spots with headshots and to get the most out of your chase potential with long-range tranq dart shots. All that said, clearly this isn't the best for the newer players she was initially intended to be played by. So how about we talk more about her more manageable variant, Rogue Val. Rogue Val is fun as hell to play, being a more independent version of Val who's capable of playing a lot more aggressively. However, she is unfortunately not a super strong pick, as she trades away a lot of her most powerful utilities to be able to achieve that independence. Still, she has her niche situations where she can really shine. Rogue Val trades away the armor-piercing sniper rifle for a semi-automatic one. It only deals half as much damage at 59, and it no longer places weak points on the monster. But you do now have 3 shots in the chamber instead of 1, which can be quickly fired off within the space of about 0.7 seconds. Other than that, though, it's statistically the same. She trades the tranq darts for the poison darts, which of course deal damage instead of slowing the monster, although they thankfully do still reveal the monster. She trades the medgun for the chain medgun, which heals only 75 health per second, and at a much shorter range of only 35 meters. However, this medgun's beam can chain and heal multiple targets, and those targets will receive half the healing of the original target. Lastly, her heal burst is completely replaced with the healing field, a completely different ability. Using this ability will instantly regenerate 1,200 HP, or in other words, 75% of Rogue Val's health, allowing her to survive many situations that would kill regular Val. But this ability does not heal anyone else. That being said, this ability is called the Healing Field for a reason. Whenever the ability is available to be used, but you're not using it, you will have a 30-meter wide passive healing aura following you around that continually heals teammates and yourself for 40 health per second. So clearly, Rogue Val is mostly intended for providing AoE heals. Thanks to her healing field and chain medgun, she is the best character in the game for that purpose. This makes her effective against Meteor Goliath, as he often wants to set as many hunters on fire at once as possible. But other than that, she's unfortunately kind of niche. Every other monster in the game would usually rather focus down a single target, rather than spread their damage out across multiple targets which can easily be healed back. And as a result, Rogue Val's AoE heals are usually not very necessary. As well as that, without tranq darts, Rogue Val's chase potential is nowhere near as impressive as regular Val, although she still has some. All that being said, don't mistake Rogue Val being a generally weak pick for her being useless. Though the AoE heals are rarely helpful, when they are very effective. And as well as that, Rogue Val does do some very good damage numbers to say that she's a medic, even if her healing usually doesn't outperform regular Val. It's still usually enough to get by. Certainly if you are struggling to play Val, it's probably better to take the more lackluster healing of Rogue Val if it means that the added self-sustain allows you to stay alive to provide that healing more consistently. Better to heal slowly and all the time, rather than to heal fast for 2 seconds before you die and never come back. Lastly, there are 2 sort of more unintuitive uses of Rogue Val's healing abilities that can make them better than Val's medgun sometimes. For one, if you don't have direct LOS of a teammate that you want to heal with a medgun, and moving towards them is likely to get you killed, if there are teammates standing close enough to your target that you can simply beam other teammates and allow the medgun to chain to the person you want to heal from them to the target, then that way is a safe way to be able to heal a teammate from a distance without having direct line of sight. The other use of this is the healing field, because while its healing is slow, it's also passive and borderline invisible to the monster. So simply staying within 30 meters of a down teammate while distracting and fighting the monster is a great way to go for some very, very sneaky revives. The monster might not even realize that you're getting the person up that's behind them because they're too busy fighting you, and they don't see anything to indicate that you're getting them up. Overall, Val is definitely the stronger pick compared to Rogue Val for every situation except the rare situations where AoE heals are actually needed. But that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't play Rogue Val. If you are struggling with regular Val, Rogue Val is a great stepping stone to get you more comfortable with her playstyle while not being as punishing to play as. And despite her lower single target healing numbers, if you were struggling a lot with regular Val, you'll honestly probably get more healing done on Rogue Val simply from being dead less. That instant 75% boost to your health is a real lifesaver, especially for people who are still trying to get their footing with the character. All that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one where we finally cover the first support in the game, Hank.